Today we're looking at World War II battleships. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. One of the most recognized symbols of American naval power during World War II was the battleship. A battleship is a heavy warship built specifically for combat with heavy metal armor and large caliber guns or cannons mounted on its deck. Today, I'm standing here in front of the USS Alabama, which was launched in February of 1942 and was a South Dakota class battleship, meaning it was built for speed rather than heavy armaments. The Alabama and its crew of 2,500 sailors saw action during World War II, primarily in the Pacific theater of the war. During World War II, the United States built 10 new battleships and updated many older ships. Although ships such as the Alabama and other battleships came to embody the naval conflict, World War II actually marked the end of the battleship era as aircraft carriers, submarines, and airborne attacks became the primary method of sea battle. Most of the battleships for the Allied and Axis powers during the war had actually been built in the early part of the 1900s and had seen action during World War I. Most were dreadnought battleships, which meant they were built with many large caliber guns mounted to the ship. This was the primary design for naval warships in the early part of the 1900s. Many were modified with newer weapons and armor, but were still older ships. Among American battleships, there were several different classes. The class simply meant what type of armor and weapons did the ship have, depending on what its purpose was in battle. For example, South Dakota class ships, as I mentioned earlier, were built for speed, such as the USS Alabama and Indiana, which could reach speeds of up to 27 knots. Other classes were built to be even faster, such as the Iowa class battleships, such as the USS Missouri and Wisconsin, that could reach speeds of 32 knots. Battleships were generally built with what was called an armor belt, which was a thick layer of steel running around the side of the ship to give the hull of the ship better protection. On the USS New Mexico, the armor belt was 13.5 inches thick of solid steel. Battleships during World War II could fire shells weighing up to 2,700 pounds and could fire at targets over 20 miles away. During World War II, there were actually very few battles in which battleships fired on one another. There were just 2 battles in the Pacific where battleships fought with each other, and then there were only 3 battleship-to-battleship engagements in the Atlantic theater. Rather, battleships many times aided in shelling land targets to soften defenses before ground troops attacked. Additionally, battleships were armed with several anti-aircraft guns, so much of their action during the war was firing on airborne enemies. You might be surprised to learn that during World War II, the United States had over 6,000 ships operating in the U.S. Navy. Of those ships, only 23 were battleships. Germany only had a fleet of 6 battleships, and Japan had 12. The largest ship in the American fleet was the USS Missouri, which was 887 feet long. It would be on the deck of the USS Missouri that Japan formally surrendered, ending the war. For Germany, their most notable battleship was the Bismarck, which measured 823 feet long. Hitler believed that the Bismarck was an indestructible force at sea, but in May of 1941, British torpedo planes crippled the Bismarck, which was then shelled by British warships, and it was sunk. Japan's premier ship was the Musashi, which was 862 feet long. Japan believed the Musashi could even the playing field for them against the United States, which had a larger navy. But in October of 1944, the Musashi sustained 25 direct torpedo hits from American torpedo bombers and was sunk off the coast of the Philippines. Although battleships were quickly becoming outdated in warfare, they were still a difficult target to sink. In total during the war, 16 were sunk by bombs or torpedoes from aircraft bombers, and 3 more battleships were sunk by submarines launching torpedoes. Despite aircraft and submarine combat taking precedent over battleships, several American battleships continued to be used after World War II in combat and as transport ships during the Korean War and up until Vietnam. Some of these great ships were scrapped and then salvaged for their metal, but others remain on display at museums today to remember the age of battleship warfare. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.